Public Library, and I'm here today to show you how to make your own crackers. And it's really pretty easy. Pretty much all the ingredients are things you might have around the house or very easy to get. So before we get started, we're going to make sure that our hands are washed and clean. Our work surfaces are all washed and clean. You can use hot soapy water to clean your counter or wherever you're working. Make sure that your hair is pulled back out of your face so it's not flopping around so you don't have to keep touching it. That you have no floppy clothes or jewelry that's going to get into your food. The key is to make sure there is nothing on you that you need to touch so that you have to keep washing your hands. So if you have glasses and they come down, push them back with the back of your hand. If your nose itches, use the back of your hand. If you sneeze or cough into your elbow, then you don't have to keep washing your hands, because every time you touch yourself, your face, your nose, your mouth, anything icky, you need to wash your hands while you're cooking. It's basic hygiene. It's basic kitchen hygiene. What we're going to need to make the crackers is we're going to need some flour, all-purpose flour, and then we're going to need some whole wheat flour. And the difference between all-purpose flour and whole wheat flour is that the whole wheat flour has the bran and the germ, the outside layer of the wheat kernel is ground up in the flour. And that gives it, excuse me, that gives it more nutrition. It also gives it a little heartier feel, a little heartier texture. And the white flour, the germ and the bran are taken off of the wheat kernel, and just the white interior is ground up. So you lose those vitamins. So if you don't have whole wheat flour, I think you could just use all-purpose flour, the regular flour that most people have in their house. But you'll need flour, you need oil, and there's a fly in my house. You need oil and a little bit of sugar and some water and whatever seasoning, whatever sprinkle you want to put on the top of your crackers. I have I made this everything, like when you get an everything bagel, it has all kinds of stuff on top. Poppy seeds, sesame seeds, toasted onion, garlic granules, salt, all of that stuff is in here. If you get a packet from the library, you will get some of that in your packet. If you don't like all of that stuff, you can just put plain salt on the top. If you want to, you can find a salt with bigger crystals like kosher salt, because that's more like the crackers that you would get in the store. You can just use regular table salt if you want, or you could use other kinds of herbs. Rosemary is good, or thyme. You can just crumble that up and sprinkle that on top of the crackers when you're ready to bake them. But we're going to use my everything seasoning, and I think that's it for the ingredients. So you're going to need a bowl to mix everything in, and you will need something to mix with. You could probably use a mixer. I'm going to use a wooden spoon. If you have a metal spoon or whatever kind of big spoon you can use for that. You're going to need a, not to hit the bowl, you're going to need a 1 cup measure and a half cup measure, half cup. And you're going to need a liquid measuring cup, and that. And you're going to need a tablespoon, a teaspoon, and a 1/4 teaspoon. You will need something to cut your crackers with. So if you have a pizza cutter like that, you can use that, or a knife, or cookie cutter. I just happen to, that's sort of like some round crackers that you find. If you want to measure your crackers, they suggest you make 3-inch by 1-inch rectangles. So if you have a measuring implement that you can wash and make sure it's clean before you put it on your dough. This is my kitchen ruler. And a pastry brush is helpful, but not completely necessary. We can get around that. And some baking pens. I have 2 here. They're too big for my screen, but I have them. And if you are able to get this, have this in your house, parchment paper. This is what a lot of chefs use to put on their pans so that they don't have to grease it, so that your items that you're baking will just lift off the paper and then you have a clean pan underneath. Not necessary. You can lightly grease your pan with some non-stick cooking spray like Pam, or you can put a little oil on a paper towel and rub it on your pan. Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. We'll also need a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, you could probably use a glass or a can, just something that will flatten your dough. But of course, a rolling pin is made for that. So we're going to start by preheating our oven to 450 degrees. That is very high. My oven may start to smoke. Okay, so that's preheating. That'll take a little while. There's our flour, and we need a cup of flour, and I always start by fluffing it up a little bit so it's not so packed together, and just sprinkling it into the cup. Okay, and then you kind of, if you want to be more precise, get a flat edge and run it across. Okay, there's our 1 cup of white flour. Now we're going to do 1/2 cup of the whole wheat flour, and I'm going to do the same thing with this. Fluff it up. In there very well. Okay, I'm going to fluff it up and sprinkle it in. And you see this is a little bit coarser, then it's not as fluffy as the white flour. This gives it a little bit more texture, a little bit more nutrition. Okay, so now we have those things. Okay, the recipe calls for a teaspoon of kosher salt, and this is a little bit coarser than table salt, but if you have table salt in your house, ordinary salt, you can just use that. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, which I have in a grinder here. So I'm just going to grind what I believe is 1/4 teaspoon into the bowl, because I've done it so much I can pretty much judge how much that is. But you'll want to measure the first time you do this. Okay. All right. So we've got our dry ingredients in there. Oh wait, I'm missing a teaspoon of sugar. Hang on, I missed that part. So my big old sugar container. I just need a teaspoon out of there. Okay. A teaspoon. Throw it in the bowl. And I'm just gonna sort of stir that together. So it's pretty much mixed up. Okay. So far, so good. Now we're going to add 1/2 cup of water to the bowl and 2 tablespoons of oil. The recipe calls for olive oil, but if you don't have olive oil, just have vegetable oil, canola oil, whatever you got. Oil is oil. Okay, 1 and 2. Okay, now we're going to stir all that around. Try to get it together a little bit. You just sort of keep smushing it around until it starts to hold together. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it out onto my counter and give it a little bit of a knead till it gets all put together. As I said before, I washed my countertop. So I'm just going to put a little bit of flour here, and I'm just going to dump the dough onto the flour and give it a little bit of a knead. Scrape that, that's sticking to the spoon, scrape that off. And now, I'm going to gather it up into knead and kind of squash your hands in, pull it over, turn. Make sure your surface is covered. Squash, pull it, squash, turn, fold, squash, whatever gets the job done. I just kind of squash, fold, and turn, squash, fold, and turn. Till your dough is nice and smooth and feels like it's well mixed and together. It's a little sticky. Okay, that feels pretty good. And just roll it into a little ball and let it sit. And cover it with a towel and you let it sit for 10 minutes. And that is so that the gluten forms and it's, well, the gluten relaxes. The gluten is when wheat protein and water are mixed together, it creates strands of protein, and those strands are very elastic. So if we let it rest for 10 minutes, it's going to relax that gluten so that it's easier to roll out. Okay, before we roll anything out, I'm going to put parchment paper on my pans. And just on there. And it won't burn. And things come right off of it. They don't stick. So, really good stuff to have in the kitchen. When you're all done, you throw it away. You just easily wash your pans. Okay, so our pans are ready. So now we're going to get our dough. And I'm going to sprinkle a little more flour. And we're going to roll it out. Now, we need to roll it to 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch, which is very, very thin. Like here is my ruler. There's your inch. There is 1/8 right there, and 1/16 is the smallest one. So that's really thin. That or that is really thin. So we got to put a little muscle into it. So I'm going to put some flour on my rolling pin as well. A little bit on top here, and just roll away. And when you're rolling out dough, you should start from the middle and go to the edges. Because if you start at the edges, then the edges get thinner than the rest of the dough. And you don't want that. So I'm going to keep rolling. You see how it kind of, it's stretching back. It's stretching and then going back to where it was. And that's the elasticity in the dough. Even though it sat for 10 minutes to rest, it's still springy. So we just have to deal with it. Maybe let some of the flour get used up so that it sticks to the countertop. Okay, that feels pretty thin. A little thicker in the middle. Oops, I'll put a wrinkle out there. Okay, edges are low. Okay, so what do I do with my ruler? 1/16 of an inch. Yeah, I think I even did it thinner. So it'll be all right if it springs back. All right, if you want to do the way the recipe calls for, you can lay your ruler down and just cut a straight edge to start with. And just when you're cutting on a surface, just make sure you're not cutting something, scratching the countertop or whatever. Okay, and all right, so the recipe is saying 1 inch by 3 inches. So if you lay out your ruler to measure 1 inch, or actually you could do this. Lay it across as far as it'll go, and then measure out, make a little hole at every inch. You see what I'm doing? Probably not. I can't see what I'm doing here. Make a hole at every inch. And then go down a little bit. Inch. Hope that you can see the hole when you need to. And let's do more. And you know, if it's not absolutely perfect, it doesn't really matter. It's your crackers. Okay, so now we're going to line up all those holes. Okay, where's that last one? Line up all the holes. And then take your cookie cutter. Cut this way. And let go. Again, find your holes. Line them up. You can use your knife for this too. It's just more fun to use. Pizza cutter. Hole, hole, hole. Sometimes it kind of, the hole kind of disappears. Come on. They're going to expand a little bit when they bake, so they're not going to be this tiny. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho. So we got our lengths. I'm going to take that edge and we can roll that one out again. So now we want to square this off a bit. Actually, we'll do this. Some of these are going to be long enough and some aren't. So we'll just figure out which ones are. 2.5. I'll get rid of some of the shorter ones, but we'll keep those. Okay, so now 3 inches down. 3, can you do your 3 times table? 3, 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. Here. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 plus 6 is 9. And then we have 12 here. Okay, maybe do this in the middle. 3, 6, 9, 12. Okay. Find our holes. Sometimes I will roll out my dough on the pan, on the parchment paper, and do this, and then I don't have to lift them and move them to the pan. So we'll do it this way because I'm following the recipe. Okay, these are too short. That one's too short. These are too short. And we'll re-roll. Okay, so there are our crackers. Now we need to get them on the pan. Not good. Alright, we'll just have to lift them by hand. Okay, these are really small. I think I would like to make them a little wider next time. I'm not really sure how close together they should be. I don't think they're going to expand that much. But we'll get them all over there. And we'll do the next step. Okay, now we've got all our crackers. I'm going to take my pastry brush and just wet the crackers a bit. And sprinkle on some of this. You're supposed to use 2 tablespoons. I guess I should measure. 2 tablespoons. Use your fingers to sprinkle it on. If you don't have a pastry brush, you can just hit your finger. Now I have stuff stuck to me. I hope these are good. I have not made this recipe, so you and I are doing a new thing together. I have made crackers before, but just not this recipe. Oh, my water is drying. Whoa, just don't saturate it. Those are little chunks of onion. Those little white things. Okay, there. Okay, we'll get these all in, all done, covered, whatever. We will put them in the oven for about 12 minutes. There they go in the oven. It says for 12 minutes. I'm going to do 10 because I rolled them pretty thinly and want to make sure that they don't burn. And you should check them often. You have an oven light, you know, peek in there and just make sure they're not getting black. So I re-rolled the scraps and used my little cookie cutter to make round ones. And put those on a pan. Fit them on here with these. On there, in there. One more. Put you right there. Okay. I'm gonna brush these. Oh, these will slide. Now I suppose you could use any kind of shapes. Hearts, stars, bears. If you want to have your own special kind of crackers shapes. Okay, let's see how these go. So here's our crackers. And the second batch I wasn't watching as closely, so they got a little bit too brown, I think. But, so we'll check it out. So, sounds crispy. Crunchy. This one, it's a little bit thicker. It's a little bit soft in the middle, but still good. And you can eat these with soup. Put some cheese on. Have a little snack. A little ham and cheese. They're kind of small, but you put a little peanut butter, or just eat them plain like this. I like it like that. They taste pretty good, and I hope you enjoy them. Keep them in an airtight container, Tupperware with a plastic container with a sealing lid, or a zipper bag, and keep them for like maybe a week. And enjoy.